Hi everyone, Liam Bailey here from O'Brien Palmer. I'm a registered liquidator and trustee in bankruptcy, and today we're talking about insolvent trading. It's important for directors to realise that they have a number of obligations and duties when acting as directors of a company. Today we're talking about the duty to prevent the company from trading whilst insolvent. Section 588G of the Corporations Act says that a director who allows a company to trade whilst insolvent can become personally liable for the debts of the company that have occurred. In last week's video, we talked about recognising the warning signs of insolvency. A company is solvent if, and only if, it can pay its debts as and when they fall due and payable. However, determining that a company is solvent is usually an exercise in recognising the warning signs of insolvency, and when enough of them are present at any point in time, directors have to accept a company is facing serious solvency issues. I recommend that you have a look at our video last week to review what are the warning signs of insolvency and how important each of them are. The solvency of the company is a question of fact, taking into account all the circumstances that the company is subject to and all the evidence available to the directors of the company. A most useful piece of advice for directors is to think about how this is going to all be examined should a liquidator ultimately be appointed to a company. And that's what we're here to talk about today. How is it that we recognise that a company became solvent, and how do we pursue insolvent trading against directors? In simplistic terms, once a liquidator is appointed to a company, we conduct an examination of the books and records of the company to try and determine when the indicia of insolvency were present in the company. All the warning signs of insolvency that we discussed in last week's video are recognisable by directors. Once a liquidator is appointed, we go back in time and see when those warning signs ought to have been recognised by a director. And it's important for you to understand that it's not just when you did recognise them, but it's when you should have, acting competently as a director, that is relevant. This is often the case that we get to look at these things with the benefit of hindsight, and therefore what should have been available to a director can look very different after the fact. It's important for directors to be realistic or not look at their businesses with rose-coloured glasses, because the people who are making decisions about whether or not you've traded the business whilst insolvent won't have any of the same biases or prejudices in favour of your business. Again, in most simplistic terms, have a look at the aging of your debtors and creditors. Once you're not paying creditors inside trade terms, the reality is that you are at risk of trading whilst insolvent. So once appointed, the liquidator will start going through all the books and records of the company to determine a date that the company became insolvent. Often, the case is that a business that comes into liquidation is that the books and records are woefully incomplete. This is not going to prevent the company from being found to be liable for insolvent trading. When a company cannot produce the books and records that it requires for a period of time, the company is actually presumed to be insolvent during that period of time. So failure to maintain or provide the books and records of the company to a liquidator will only exacerbate the situation of a finding of insolvent trading. Once the liquidator determines the date on which the company became insolvent, they will determine also which debts the company is subject to that were incurred after that date. They'll add those numbers up, and that will be the basis for a claim against the director for insolvent trading. The process from this point on usually has the liquidator issuing a letter of demand to the director for payment of the amounts owed as an insolvent trading claim, and if this cannot be resolved with the director, litigation usually follows. The Act also provides a number of defences to directors against insolvent trading. The defences are: 1. Reasonable grounds to suspect insolvency. If you're a director that had reasonable grounds to suspect the company was insolvent, for example, you had dedicated staff who reported the financial position of the company and that information was misreported to you, you may be able to mount a defence against insolvent trading. So it's important to note you cannot abdicate this responsibility to somebody else. You need to be looking into the records provided to you by your financial controllers and accounting staff and making an assessment of the accuracy of the information provided to you. The second defence is one of taking reasonable steps to prevent the company from incurring the debts. This is not as simple as saying that you're not trying to do so. You have to look at the legal options. If you're a director, it might be that you need to have called a meeting of the directors to recommend against the company incurring debts, or perhaps taking steps to attempt to wind the company up to prevent the company from incurring debts. This is not an easy defence to claim. The last defence is one of non-involvement in the company's affairs. But again, your responsibility as a director cannot be abdicated. The only time this defence is reasonably claimable is if you are prevented from taking part in the management of the company due to illness or in unlikely circumstances, perhaps because you were incarcerated. Another issue to consider is if you have a holding company one that holds all the assets of your company, that company can also be found to be liable for insolvent trading if that company is subject to the exact same control of directors as the company that actually incurred the debts. Sophisticated corporate structures are not necessarily a way to defeat the liability for insolvent trading. How does this all play out in practice? The first is that most liquidators are looking to resolve the issues of insolvent trading with directors without the need for litigation. Litigation is costly, expensive, and uncertain, and only results in a decreased return to creditors. Liquidators are required to consider the commerciality of commencing legal action for the recovery of insolvent trading before taking any action. In doing so, we look at the financial capacity of a director who is found to be liable for an insolvent trading claim, or the defence is raised by the director, and ultimately would tend to seek settlement. If reasonable settlement cannot be reached with the director, litigation is usually the only likely outcome. This information about how liquidators resolve insolvent trading claims is highly relevant for you when you're considering whether or not you wish to bring a defence against a claim for insolvent trading or seek to settle the claim. Keep in mind that liquidators are bound to act in the best interest of creditors, so any claim that is going to result in the best outcome financially for creditors is a good argument that a liquidator needs to take into account. Ultimately, the risk to directors is that if insolvent trading claim is litigated successfully, it could result in directors being made bankrupt and their personal assets come into play in respect of their company debts. So it's always important to take these issues seriously. If you're on the receiving end of an insolvent trading claim and need some advice, contact O'Brien Palmer. We're happy to have a conversation with you on a no-fee, no-obligation basis about how to resolve any of these issues and possibly make some recommendations for you to obtain the best advice in dealing with these claims. Unlike my previous videos, which have been a lot more positively focused, solvency is a serious issue facing business. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There are definite options to turn your business around, so take action today. No, I think this one I'm going to leave it because it's really serious. I guarantee you Chris Palmer's first comment will be, "Why are you wearing pink?"
I think beautiful. You need to hang this up in these videos, man.
I don't want to say that. What am I saying? I'm just getting tied up on it now. Another issue, once you're not paying your creditors, why do I get so tongue-tied on this side of the camera?